Hey folks, I was happy to have Mike Malaga on this latest edition. As how does the bank analyze their support to the automotive companies? We talk a little bit about how a bank looks at a company and how can a company control the variables. Give it a listen. Let me or Mike know your thoughts. Just want to share the best value we can for all of us here in the market.
Hey Mike, thanks so much for joining us today on the Cash Flow Chronicles Open Forum. I know you're involved in the auto sector, serving on various boards, and it's really exciting to hear some of the things you have to share, all the variables taking place. You want to tell us a little bit more about yourself, your expertise?
The bank has actually asked me to lead our practice to help grow our automotive supply-based business and lend money to suppliers. Pretty involved in a couple of different organizations. The bank is a Center for Automotive Research affiliate. We are part of Mish Auto. I just joined the board at Mish Auto. I'm part of Society of Automotive Analysts. I do some MEMA stuff. So pretty involved. I go to them and I take crazy mad notes, unlike I did in college. I take great notes now, and I do it because I can share. I did it to start sharing internally. Like, okay, this is what was covered at this conference, and talk about it. And here's the issues and what people are seeing and thinking and doing. And then I kind of spread that. I'm like, oh, I shared this with my auto customers. And I've since shared this with, a number of different people in different walks of life in the deal community, attorneys, CPAs, advisors. People want to read it because they can't be everywhere. So I'm happy to share it and people get a little insight and a little knowledge out of it. That's great. So that's what I do day to day is help the bank grow, help suppliers grow their business and manage cash and manage risk and manage personal wealth. That's what we do.
I think it's really helpful from that standpoint. When we first met, 2 years ago, and I was on the distribution list, like, here's my notes from the various events. Yeah. And of course, I pushed that up the ladder with my large organization, and it's a local boots on the ground perspective.
Sure.
Versus how, because we're local, and we previously talked about, unless you're boots on the ground here locally in the automotive sector with local insights from your suppliers, the pain they're feeling, you really don't know what's going on.
The best knowledge I get is from the customers I talk to, or for the companies that may not bank with Comerica, but we're exploring opportunities. That's the best source of knowledge. Talk about boots on the ground. They're dealing every day with this program, this OEM, this supplier, this raw material. I get a great feel for what's going on from them.
And it's great to that point, because what I do with trade credit insurance, I can always present the idea, and then I'm in there, I look at the relationship, I look at their books, I'm like, hey, you have a great relationship. Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna touch that. Thank you for letting me come in. And then vice versa, you're like, what are you doing? So it's interesting because you get to hear, they're not misinformed about how to run their business, but just their perspective is totally different. So
completely, yeah.
And you've done it for 35 years.
I have, yeah.
So your wealth of knowledge has to be pretty vast.
I've accumulated a lot of facts over the years. So,
yeah. If you're not learning, you're not growing.
Exactly. So I try and learn something. I do learn something every day.
Yeah, I think, and I guess that leads to my first question for you, and this is kind of the BEV transition right away.
Yeah.
I had to dig to it right away.
Well, it's been an interesting ride, pun intended, I guess. I've gone back and looked at some notes and some PowerPoints and some decks and thought about some conferences I attended back in 18 and 19, pre-pandemic. At that time, everybody was talking about, it's going to be autonomous, right? We're going to be all autonomous all the time. And then kind of like in 2020, even the pandemic is going on, the shift was made, and it's like, I think people realize autonomy is really hard. To have Jetson-like vehicles where we're just motoring around without a steering wheel and there's no accidents, there's a lot we have to cover to get there. But battery electric became, all right, this is where we're going. And, there's government mandates on, we have to do this, CAFE standards, PA requirements, and if you don't hit them and meet them with your fleet at such and such date, you're going to be fined millions, tens, hundreds of millions of dollars. And so the OEMs take notice, and they're all BEV. Like, we're going. And some, like General Motors, said, we're just going all BEV by 2030, 2035, whatever the year. We're going to be all BEV. We're not going to make gasoline engines anymore. Others were like, maybe we'll be a little slow, we'll mix it in. Some of the Japanese would took a tact of, we're going to focus on hybrid, right? It'll be better for the planet. We still have some electrification, but we're still going to have ICE engines. So, it was a mix. And then tons of investment made. I mean, for a while there, it was a competition. Who can announce the bigger investment in Blue Oval City or Factory Zero or, you name it, we're going to make these big. Oh, and then we're going to build battery plants on top of that. And there's billions and billions of dollars going into battery because we're going to need to make a bunch of batteries. What everybody failed to understand was the consumer might not have been ready for this escalation of adoption. And we sit here today with about 8% market share of battery electric vehicles, and it's stagnated. And in some cases, it's leaking backwards a little bit. Tesla, phenomenal story, struggled for 10 years and then took off like a rocket. They make 2 million units a year now. That's a hard thing to do. But they've kind of plateaued. And now they've got bigger competition around the world with the Chinese, with BYD, for example. And the consumer here in the United States, price is an issue. People still have an issue with, am I going to get there? Anxiety. Can I tow something? Does a BEV truck make sense for me? Like, can I put my boat on it and go up north and make it? Or can I use it around town and run, all my work stuff out of this pickup truck? And I think all these factors confluence together and everything slows down. Right. And almost to the point where the OEMs then say, you know what, we're going to delay this program. We're going to delay this program. We're going to not do this program. We're canceling this program. And that's fine and good. But when the OEMs were awarding work to suppliers for these new programs that have been delayed or canceled, those suppliers went out, made commitments, bought equipment, expanded buildings, bought buildings, staffed up. Like, okay, we're going to. Wait a minute, you're stopping? I just bought all this new equipment for your program. What are we doing? And that's caused problems, right? Like often they came to the bank. They came to me and borrowed some money for equipment. Other banks, that debt has to start to be repaid, but there's no revenue source supporting that any longer. So that has caused problems.
And part of my job too is I track bankruptcies and various on a daily basis. So we are seeing a lot of companies with that free money, even from COVID, that's maturing right now. And it's these companies bringing tariffs on top of that as well. What are you going to do?
Right.
When we look at the auto supply chain, there's so many variables these companies have to manage.
We saw in the pandemic, started with chip shortage, right? Like, God, we don't have chips. We can't make vehicles, and vehicle inventories just plummeted. Car prices, you had to go to a dealer and pay 20 grand over sticker to get a vehicle sometime, right? That was a thing. It happened. And everybody was like, wow, the supply base is kind of maybe not as stable as everybody thought it was. And then we got into the big inflation problems and the supply base was reeling. Like that was a problem. And we're experiencing it again now with tariffs. The supply base is working on margins that are so tight, and you got revenue volatility on top of that. We want you got to pay a tariff on that part that you're bringing over a border to put on an assembly that you're selling to us. And the suppliers are like, that's not on me. That you want me to buy that thing for I can't cover the tariff. Like it'll kill my margin and profitability, and I won't be able to service debt. And what am I doing this for at that point?
I have my operational structure needs. Staffing's going up from a cost standpoint.
Yes.
Talking about inflation to that as well. Right. Everything costs more.
Right.
Yeah, and all the ongoing negotiations with tariffs is like Stellantis going to pay it for their supply base because they're losing some credibility. When you're in the auto supply chain, it's what are you supposed to do right now?
Right. So there's a direct impact, right? Like the supplier who has to buy the component bring it over a border, there's a tariff that has to be paid, right? So who's responsible for that tariff? And I think a lot of suppliers, some of my customers that I know of that have said to their either large tier one or OEM customer, we're not paying for it. Like you can pick up your dies and like we're not doing that. And I think the OEMs in particular, and probably some of the larger tiers, get it. And they're like, all right, we'll figure this out, right? So it's not smooth sailing by any means. It's a process that's evolving. Like okay, we're tracking. What's the mechanism for getting reimbursed for the tariffs that we're paying that are due within 10 days of bringing it over the border? OEMs don't operate on 10-day payment cycles, right? You know it, I know it, it's not happening, right? So, and then it gets kicked up to, departments around the world and upstairs and downstairs. What's the mechanism? So these things are building and there is some stress being caused for our supply base as they figure out, well, all right, I'll pay for the tariff now, but I got to get reimbursed, right? So there's a bridge there, right? We got to bridge that gap. And then, so that's the direct part, but the indirect part is really up to the OEMs. All right, we're getting socked with some of these, most of these, all of these tariffs. What are we going to do? Are we going to raise prices of a vehicle to offset the tariff to preserve our profitability? The average price of vehicles is about $49,000 today. And I've read that in some cases, tariffs for a given vehicle could be anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000. Well, if you tack on $5,000 to $15,000 on top of that average price, that may really quell demand and revenue drops, and nobody has the wherewithal to keep going. Like, that's a problem too.
That's kind of a chicken and an egg dynamic because,
right. What do we do?
I
could pass it all on to the consumer and take it on the chin and not sell as many vehicles, right?
Yep.
And
that affects downstream.
Absolutely, it rolls downstream, and those suppliers down at the lower end are reliant on all of that revenue to do what they do.
One thing I remember in the previous administration, we met at Center for Automotive Research when they said the projection of the EVs to be, what was it, 50% of vehicles by
2035, I think, was kind of the thought.
And then, of course, they're realistically, we think maybe 15.
I've seen some 20% that seem to make some sense to me, 2022. I mean, who knows, right? It's 10 years away from today. I like to know where we're at in 5 months from now on a number of issues, let alone what BEV adoption is going to be.
Because I think our role as up advisors is helping companies make payroll and keep their lights on. Strategic planning, it's hey, let's just work on where we're at right now. Right. Talk about a cash flow forecast and things like that.
Which is where diversity of revenue comes from when you think about customer diversity, but also within that customer, what programs are you working on? What vehicles are you making parts for? Did you push all in and say, I'm going BEV? And we could be with Stellantis and they were like, okay, we're bringing out the BEV pickup truck because they got to keep up with the Ford Lightning and they got to keep up with the GM BEV pickup trucks as well. Well, they've shifted. And they've said they went from, we're going to put the E-Rev out, right? The onboard engine to charge the battery. Well, last week they said we're bringing the Hemi back, right? So if you pushed all your chips in and on this program and that program's getting pushed out into the horizon, what are you going to do?
Because as a supplier, you don't have control.
You absolutely don't.
It's really just, and I feel like these OEMs, they know the pressure they're putting, but they don't know what to do.
Right.
Or hey, I'm so sorry. This is, I guess, shifting focus towards this rare earth to talk about onshoring.
Yeah. So the rare earth thing, you could characterize it as what is, most people, rare earth.
I saw a news article about that. What is rare earth?
So there's I think it's 17 different types of elements that are mined. And the whole thing with rare earth is 70% of rare earth materials used in manufacturing are mined in China. 90% of them are refined and processed in China. So everything is kind of going through China, and we have now this trade war thing going on with China. I was actually getting a bit concerned about it because China, in response to tariffs that the US put on, 45% at one point, said, all right, you know what? We're gonna make it harder to export, right? There's a myriad of paperwork and there's curbs and we can only export. We're only gonna allow so much exporting. And I went oh my God, this is going to be like chips all over again, right?
Yeah.
But with chips, you could make a vehicle and maybe your massager on your seat didn't work. But okay, we'll get you a chip later and we'll fix the massager on your seat. Rare earth is used for a number of different things. And you'd think, well, battery electric vehicles, it's 8% of what we sell today. So okay, those people are going to... Well, they use rare earths in windshield wiper, in your alternator, in your anti-lock brakes. If you don't have anti-lock brakes, you're probably not going to sell that car. Like you could sell the car without the seat massager, right? Yeah. So I was beginning to be concerned, like this could be really, really bad. A few days ago, the U.S. and Chinese representatives met in London and worked out a trade deal. Part of their give is they're going to continue to supply rare earth materials. I don't know if the agreement's been signed yet. I haven't heard that. Like they said, we've reached it. It's got to be approved by President Trump and President Xi, but we have a framework for a deal. Okay, well, let's get it signed so that we can kind of put that behind us, at least for now. Maybe it's kicking the can, but we're going to have to figure out as an industry and a country, like, okay, where are we going to shake out with rare earths? Like, we have more lithium than we know what to do with in this country. It's refining it. Nobody wants a lithium processing thing.
And that's what I saw is just the environmental concerns of mining those rare earth materials on site. So the current administration has 3 more years. By the time these things are set up, we're a year left in the administration.
Herein lies the bigger picture problem of where we've been and where we're at and where we could be going, right? Is shifting policy, and you have an industry that craves and desires stability. We haven't had stability in 6 years, right? Like there was a good period between the Great Recession and 2019 when things were kind of boring, and boring in the industry is good because you made 17.5 million vehicles a year. Everybody's got revenue, everybody's got volume, everybody's making money, everybody's happy. And since the strike, the UAW strike in 2019 against General Motors till today, it's been absolute chaos.
Could you come based on, and this could have been before your time as a professional, when we've gone through this level of change in the automotive sector?
I would have never bet this would happen, ever in a million years. And I've been through the Great Recession. Okay, that was bad, right?
Yeah.
Like at the time, it was like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And I went through a number of different cycles and recessions and struggling OEMs. You know, Chrysler's had a great myriad of stories over the last 30 years of whether it's bringing the cab forward intrepid design to market following the K car and the near bankruptcy to going through a bankruptcy and then having a hedge fund, private equity, whose name is synonymous with the dog that guards the gates of hell. Like it's been that crazy. But the last 6 years has been that on steroids.
What's going to happen next week in the industry?
I don't know. I wish I knew, but I would have never thought rare earth was coming. Tariffs. I've never thought about a tariff for the last 29, 30 years, and then all of a sudden, it's the one thing that we're talking about every day.
And for as wild as this new policy is, the majority of our population voted for that person, so they agree in a certain perception. So we don't know if it's going to continue. Politics aside,
we've gone from have to do the BEV thing. Today, the Senate Finance Committee is saying we are going to get rid of the tax credits for BEVs faster than the House wants to get rid of them. Okay, to your point, what happens in 3 years if there is an administration change and it goes back onto the Democratic regime versus the Republican regime? Like, where does that take us? And do we have to restart all this and go back to EV mandates? And I don't know, that's a challenge.
It speaks to when we went to Center for Automotive Research and Debbie Dingle spoke to us and said, yes, Congress doesn't know what manufacturing in the Midwest is like.
No idea.
They have zero. They think it's all in California now.
Right. Yes.
So, and I think just giving an active voice to what the reality is for manufacturing today in the Midwest. We don't want another Rust Belt type circumstance because the Midwest is thriving and people haven't been to Detroit or haven't been to Cleveland. They don't know what it's like here. And I think that's a critical thing.
For sure.
It's a very real reality that we're all dealing with. It's super vital. So the one thing from a standpoint in the automotive sector, all the uncertainty, what have you been seeing in the M&A world right now?
Big picture M&A, things have been slow, right? I think there was this sense of coming out of the election and seeing that the Trump administration was coming back, and you would have his agenda and ideology leading where business was going. I think there was a lot of, all right, let's go. There's going to be a lot of activity, a lot of deals, a lot of
pro-business.
Go crazy, pro-business. The environment's going to be great. And I think there was some gearing up for that, and then the tariff thing happened. And then you throw the confusion of tariffs and the specter of what does this mean for this business, this supplier? There's higher cost trailing 12. EBITDA looks less, which reduces value. So now the person selling is like, maybe I want to ride this out. The buyers are like, I don't know if I want to pay that much. Like they want to retrade deals because of all the uncertainty. And then, that's big picture macro A world, I think. And then you go to the automotive section, which is a very specialized world because a lot of volatility, a lot of risk, a lot of consumer issues that drive revenue, electrification policy. Like there's all this noise going on. It takes some fortitude to want to wade into that when, a lot of private equity, they like service businesses, right? I don't have giant capital expenditure needs every single year to continue what I have to maintain what I have or to grow. I got to go out and build new plants and bring on more equipment, and it just drains cash flow.
And you look at that multiplier that's built on stability.
And there's been no stability. It's tough sledding in the industry from an M&A standpoint. I will say I was at an ACG function, I think it was the M&A Awards, and it's a room filled with deal professionals.
Yeah.
Attorneys and CPAs and consultants and investment bankers. And the sentiment that night seemed to be, okay, we're going to figure out tariffs big picture. Other countries in the United States will probably work out trade deals. And once we know where we're going to be, then we can execute, we can operate, right? And I think they were all thinking, we get this settled hopefully in the summertime. End of the year is going to be crazy busy like 2021 was. We're going to see crazy deal activity. The longer we leak into the summer without having trade deals and tariff specter, and now you throw some major global events on top of that, like who knows, right? So I think we're going to head back up into big deal volume and opportunities. It's just a matter of when does the green flag get waved and deals start.
It's interesting you bring that up. I was talking to my brother-in-law about this. I'm like, it's wild. Like I'm so busy in my little specter, but we have like the domestic political scene. It's all over the news. Oh wait, Israel's bombing Iran.
Right.
Ukraine and Russia's going on too.
Oh yeah.
Incredibly unfortunate.
And just maybe circling Taiwan. I don't know. Yeah,
It's a unique time we're in globally.
It is.
As a business, how do you plan for this?
You do the best you can because like you said, who would have thought, what's next? Like who would have thought tariffs would have been such an issue 6 months ago? Nobody.
Yeah.
Who would have thought rare earth would have been a thing? Not many people. So for us, what we think of as bankers is, operational control. What do you control? How do you perform with what you control on your plant floor, in your C-suite? What decisions do you make? How do you staff? How do you purchase? How do you pay? Cash is king. Cash flow chronicles, right?
I was going to bring that
Cash
up.
is king. Like, what are you doing to preserve cash flow for your business to get through tough times? And I think one of the biggest things that I've seen since the Great Recession, when we got through the Great Recession, there was a lot of unstable companies out there. Those who survived, I think all of those who survived said to themselves, I never want to do that again. So I'm going to build a balance sheet. I'm going to have dry powder. I'm going to put some cookies in the cookie jar for the rainy day. I'm going to have something I can withstand, maybe a class 3 hurricane. Class 5 is going to wipe a lot of people out, but you're going to be able to take on some high winds and manage some high water, but get through it, right? So as bankers, we focus on your management team, your decisions, how you operate on the plant floor, key performance indicators, current ratios and things like that are all great. Fixed charge coverage is great, but really it starts with, well, what's your PPM? What's your on-time delivery rate? What's your spill rate? Like all those things is what drives profitability.
Because those are those hidden sinkers of cash because you're not operationally efficient.
The better you do it, the more profitable and cash flow rich you'll become.
100%.
Absolutely.
And I was going to say, as far as liquidity, a number of companies I talked to says, we're not going to take out a line from the bank. We're avoiding debt. And it's interesting because a number of bankers, it's like, they don't realize, and selfishly, bankers want to lend out loans,
sure.
But I think the perception is it's debt. I don't want that from a line from your bank. But can you speak a little bit more about that? It's like, we don't want to take on any debt.
I think people are cautious about taking on debt. You know, pre-Great Recession, I had customers, they're equipment junkies or real estate junkies, and they'll admit it freely, like,
Yeah.
I love equipment. My conversations used to be, hey, we got some new work, we're gonna buy a new mill or a new press or something, but actually I'm gonna buy 3, and then I'll fill it with more work. I'll find more work to fill those, I just get 3 of them. Go through the Great Recession and then, you know, discipline. Those same customers would then say, I got new work. I'm struggling to buy 1 machine to do the work. I could probably make it work with what I got. I might have to put some work outside. So it was kind of a mindset shift of, I gotta preserve my balance sheet. I don't wanna be too levered.
Yeah.
There's an appropriate mix of leverage.
I couldn't agree with you more because it's the whole debt management avenue, because the cost of debt,
Absolutely.
especially right now,
Today is higher than it was for 15 years.
When do you see that going down? I don't see that going down for the foreseeable future.
I don't either. I think the Fed, their main marching orders that they've established, their goal is to control inflation. And if you look around, inflation's not under control. Maybe macro, it feels like, you know, the numbers are 2%, 2.5%. Have you been out for tacos lately and spent $85 for a couple of margaritas and tacos? And you're like, what happened? In my head, it still seems like a $35 meal, right?
Because wages haven't caught up to the cost of anything right now. It's just
Cost of food, cost of transportation, costs. All this cost is still building. If you want to reshore work into the United States from Mexico, there's a big cost differential in your labor,
Yep.
right? But maybe that'll help the automation sector because they're going to replace jobs with more automation than manual labor when they can.
But of course, that's capital intensive as well.
Right. So yeah, back to chicken and egg.
Yeah.
You know, how do we pull this off?
And it's all forecast driven and like a brand new sector.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think really the last thing I want to talk about as well is just the construction sector, to shift focus off of auto. That's a good sign of the economy as well as construction. What are you seeing in that work?
Construction, surprisingly, in the commercial industrial sector, particularly for industrial buildings, like there's a shortage of industrial buildings. There's a couple of buildings going on the market from a large supplier that failed recently, and there's going to be a bidding war for those. They're really nice spaces, good locations, well-equipped, high bay, heavy crane. There's going to be a lot of desirable suitors for those. To build a building today, inflation, it's expensive, right? So there is a very tight inventory from what I've seen in the industrial space. And I have a couple of industrial contractors as customers, and they continue to be busy because people are continuing to build. And one of them focuses almost exclusively in the auto sector. They're booming. They have more work than they can shake a stick at. I take some solace in that. That's a good thing. You know, investment is continuing because as an industry, you have to evolve and you have to have new facilities and bigger, better, and more efficient. So there are good signs, I think, that part of the real estate world is good. The office space, not so much. Like you drive down Troy, down here on Big Beaver, you can find space, a lot of space available. There's space available downtown. That's a tough spot. And I think residential is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I think with because there's certain companies that we know of, well-established global companies in our sector that are building brand new headquarters and they require in the office.
Right.
But it's interesting because I talk to those employees like, oh, we just show up at 8, then we leave. Or it's things like that. Right. So it's like how much of the space is being utilized. So you're seeing a pushback, but it's an interesting, because there's going to be a bit of a revolt, I think, because just
the pendulum swinging, right?
Exactly.
Coming out of the pandemic, the employees were in great demand, and they're like, we don't want to go back. We're not coming back. And slowly but surely, I think, particularly in the service world, like it's kind of shifted. And, other banks have made mandates. You're going to be in the office so many days a week. And my bank, we're expected to be in the office several days a week. And that's fine. In the auto world, it's tough to work remote, right? Like, I guess if you're in purchasing, you can, or HR or things like that. But plant floor, you got to show up and run that machine. So,
100%.
The auto supply base, if you talk about in office, a lot of them are like, we never left the office. We've been here every day since 2020. Like we had to show up.
And some people like, you get to work from home all the time. And it's like, you don't know what it's like.
For sure.
Is this my home or is this my office? Why does your phone always go off? So I think the biggest thing is anything in closing, as far as what we're seeing in the marketplace, advice you have to businesses, because we're in pretty unique times in the marketplace. I'm a firm optimist, because listen, if you build stability, you're good. But at the same time, any advice you have beyond that?
I think you just have to keep your eye on the ball every single day, and you have to work to get better. You have to make your company better and have the right people doing the right things and making the right decisions, chasing the right customers and the right work and pricing it appropriately and trying to make a margin and reinvesting in your business. I think the days of pumping every last nickel out of your business into offshore bank account somewhere like that doesn't work anymore. You have to build a balance sheet. You have to be disciplined. And you have to, the world has changed so much. Like fraud has always been out there. The amount of fraud attempts that happen every day is mind-boggling. It's check fraud, it's wire fraud, it's ACH fraud. That's one thing I tell all of my customers, any business owner I meet, just words of advice. To protect your cash and your cash flow, you got to protect losses that are not operational losses, from you mispricing something and it comes off the press and you put it in a box and you're stapling a dollar bill to it. Oh, you didn't have a firewall, right? Or you didn't have proper protocol to make a payment to somebody. You took somebody's email at their word and wired money and, well, they said this is where the money should go. That was a fraudulent email. Like, people have to be on point every single day and guard their cash like it's precious. It's precious. Cash is precious, right? It's finite and you can lose it in an instant. You can light it on fire if you want. And if you choose not to protect yourself against fraud, you may light your cash on fire.
Obviously, I'm in the AR space too. It's like if somebody doesn't pay you, what's that going to do to your business?
I think what you do in the insuring receivables world, it's an insurance policy. I tell my customers that all the time. I have one customer who performs great, profitable, insures every single receivable he can because he likes that peace of mind. And I think he's had, in my experience with him over 15 years, 2 instances where he's had to make a claim. And they weren't for big dollars, but he's insuring every single customer. And I look at that, well, that's a blue chip customer. That's a Fortune 500 customer. But he does it, and I'm glad he does.
As a bank, it's another level of risk control.
It absolutely is.
And I always tell anyone, if you have a credit limit over $50,000, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. They could face a lawsuit, this or that.
Right.
On average, it's a sizable portion of your business, and cash is king.
Right.
I think just how do you build stability in your business and your cash flow? There's so many variables that contribute to that.
There's a large supplier that was in the news last week, filed bankruptcy, and they owe their two customers were supporting them with cash infusions, and they owe $750 million. How would you like to be somebody who sells to that company and have a receivable owing from that company who just went into bankruptcy, right? Like, if you'd have protected yourself on the front end, you're probably in a better spot.
And one thing that's unique about what I do, I had conversations with one of their suppliers. We told them 2 years ago, hey, don't trust their AR. We know them. I'm like, okay, I'm not to tell you how to run your business, but This is the value of having somebody that could just don't rely on word of mouth or credit reports or anything along those lines. Just be mindful.
Right.
I'm not going to tell you to run your business, but this is a risk we're not willing to take.
Right.
As the world's leading information provider.
Yeah.
I think stability is a big piece in a very unstable environment. Thank you so much for joining, Mike.
This has been great. I'm glad you had me. Thank you.
I appreciate your time, especially bringing your insight, because you have a lot of experience to bring to the table. And I think just we can get into the weeds of all the various panel discussions that people go through. But I think a high level overview is super helpful. And in addition, we'll have your LinkedIn contact information.
And get on my mailing list. I'll send you my meeting notes.
All of your insights.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have a lot to share within the group, so I think it's.
And if you're a foodie, if you know me and you're on LinkedIn, you might see some food in my posts.
I think it's chili cook-off between us two. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and wish you all have a wonderful day.